We've been asked time and again to do high-mileage, long-term test rides on ATVs. And the truth is, we know that there's tons of great benefits to doing those and great information for you. But the problem is, we just don't have the time to put in on all those older vehicles when we're testing so many new ones. I'm not looking for your sympathy. Terrible problem to have, right? Well, we heard your request, and while it's hard to pick an older ATV to test, we did decide to do it based on a budget, with a few parameters. The budget is $2,500, and those parameters are simply four-wheel drive and a vehicle that's in good enough condition that it's not needing any kind of work to be done to ride it. Well, that seems pretty easy. I'm a fussy guy when it comes to condition, and seeing as I've worked on a lot of ATVs over the years, I can spot the junk pretty quickly. So the vehicle that I was able to locate was a 1998 Arctic Cat 500 4x4. This is 100% legit. I own this vehicle now. It's not something that I found in the back of a friend's barn and I'm borrowing for the week. And while you may think, where am I going to find that particular ATV? It's less about the particulars and more the general features that are very popular with this vintage, namely solid rear axle, shaft drive, and gear-on-gear transmissions. These key components are pretty much common fare from the Honda Foreman, Kawasaki Bayu, and Yamaha Kodiak and Big Bear. So if you find one of those, you'll be getting something very similar to this. And here are the quick specs. 2,174 original miles. 493cc liquid-cooled Suzuki M406 single-cylinder engine. Automatic clutch gear-on-gear transmission. 5 forward gears, 1 reverse via rocker shifter. Manually selectable high and low range. Full-time 4x4. 10 inches of ground clearance, 7.2 inches of suspension travel. There really are a lot of features to this old ATV. I mean, if you're on a budget of $2,500, there's not a whole lot that you're going to be lacking. Now, there was a couple of extra features that came not from the factory, but from the user who purchased this before us, like the 2,500-pound Warn winch, as well as the 2-inch custom-made hitch receiver up front. Keep in mind this ATV is from the same year Google was founded and Apple created the iMac. Actually, the power from this little Suzuki wasn't considered so little back in the day and was a statement for the relatively new builder of ATVs, who claimed class-leading torque with what I can imagine is roughly 30 to 32 horsepower, considering the 454 was 28 horse. Like most single-cylinder, mid-size engines, this thing lugs, and when you hook it to the manual transmission, it actually is quite fun to run through the gears. And truly an ATV of this vintage featuring a manual transmission and a fully sealed driveline was designed to be worked just as much as it was trail-ridden. Most manufacturers have moved away from utility-based ATVs focused on hard-working drivelines that will take years of abuse. But our 500 Arctic Cat is sure to be here for the long haul and will be quite happy to lug, pull, and push anything you'd like, with zero chance of burning up a belt. And with the low range option, you'll never be searching for a lower drive ratio. Suspension in this day was one of the biggest areas of progression, and Arctic Cat actually had a bit of a hand up on most of the competition. Ground clearance of 10 inches combined with 25-inch tires meant you could cruise over objects the competition would contact. And with the popularity of solid axle ATVs, this was a big deal. But possibly equally as important was the semi-independent rear suspension. Hooking the rear axle to the chassis was a 4-link type rear axle that allowed not just vertical motion, but side-to-side articulation as well. While the Suzuki Quadrunner offered independent rear suspension, the Arctic Cat's semi-independent rear end was considered very compliant in its day. I'm not saying that it's comparable to today's ATVs. Heck, I'm not even saying it's comparable to the last 10 years of ATVs. But you gotta remember, I only paid $2,500 for it. I enjoy the vintage yet acceptably compliant ride. When you couple the articulating rear axle's 7.2 inches of travel with the independent front suspension, it's fun. I'm not riding at the speed or confidence level I normally would, as the front end does dive more than I'm used to, and it tracks a bit strange through corners due to the high level of caster, but it does keep it tracking straight. Shifting's fun, and if you do encounter a big hill or rocky section you want to play at, the low range and four-wheel drive lets you get through most terrain with ample torque and power delivery you just don't get from a CB2 equipped ATV. One thing I noticed about the 500 right away is the size. I mean, it's considerably smaller than a conventional modern ATV, but that's not necessarily a drawback. Yeah, we all love bigger and badder and more aggressive ATV designs. This ain't it. But because of the smaller stature of the late 90s ATVs, you feel much more in control. The ATV doesn't seem to overwhelm you in size, and you get great sight lines for both utility and trail usage. With a dry weight somewhere close to 625 pounds, it doesn't feel like a big ATV even though it weighs more than most modern quads. In 1998, the retail price of the 500 4x4 Arctic Cat would have been roughly $6,500. Considering it's gone 20 years and still fetches this price is impressive. Not to mention, it's still in excellent working condition. Sure, we found a very clean version, but 20 years is 20 years. You know, I think most of the crew around here thought that I was a little bit crazy, trying to find an ATV for under $2,500 that didn't need any work and was in pretty good repair. I even thought I was a little crazy, but after a bit of searching, something popped up, and I'm pretty happy with what we got. I think if I was a new ATV rider or a family trying to add a third or fourth ATV to the rig, I'd be pretty happy, and I'd know that I've got a solid and reliable machine that's going to offer me many more years of reliable service. It only takes 2 clicks to like and subscribe to our page, where you can check out a huge variety of ATV and side-by-side videos just like the one you watched.